Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I like to provide various price guides for vintage and modern Star Wars toys and intersperse that with new unboxings from my own collection. And today we're going to take a look at mint on card sales for vintage Kenner items, mainly focused on Empire Strikes Back card backs, but we've got a little bit of everything, some 12 backs and some later card backs. And Gold Star Tech, who is a seller on eBay, had a number of very nice 21 back G Empire Strikes Back transition cards that all sold at auction. So I wanted to cover those along with a few others. So please consider subscribing and like this video if you enjoy my content. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. This seller had a 12 back A R2-D2 unpunched, no price sticker AFA 75. Very nice example. And there's the subgrades on that, 85, 75, 85. So two 85 subgrades, but the blister score of 75 brought it all the way back down to a 75. And I understand why when you look at it. The stem had some issues with it, as you can see kind of down there. A little bit of stem issues, maybe a little bit of rippling. That can get caused by overheating the blister before it gets attached to the card back. That is something that a lot of Empire Strikes Back card backs are known for. But this was a 12 back A, and you know, it's one of the earliest card backs available out there. Very nice example. In an auction, it sold for $13.25, which I thought was a pretty good deal for a 12A. I've seen 12Cs, like AFA 80s, go for more than this price, and I know it's a lower score, but it is a 12 back A, so I thought $13.25 was not a bad deal at all. Same seller had this one. It was a 12 back A Darth Vader, and it was graded AFA 80, 80, 75, 85, and channel subscriber and Patreon supporter, he did notice that there's a little bit of veining on the Star Wars logo that you can see there. It's very faint, but it is there, and that's probably why it got the 80 grade overall for the card score. But still, I mean, that is a beauty. If you look at it, that's very, very nice. On this one, I'm not really sure why it got the 75. It did have a little ding at the very top there. Bottom of the blister looked really nice, but I guess that ding was enough to bring it down to a 75 for the blister score, which seems pretty harsh to me, but I guess I get it. I don't know. I'd have to see it, you know, in hand, but usually I'm a pretty good judge there, and to me that feels like an 80 when I look at that blister, but it is what it is, and that, you know, I guess that held the price down a little bit. For a 12A Vader, overall AFA 80 near mint for $2,000. That went a lot less than I expected, but I think it is because of that 75 sub score that brought the price down just a little bit. But still a very nice example, and I would be perfectly happy with that one in my collection, especially at that price. On the other end here was the 12B Vader AFA 80 Plus. It was a punched example as well, and that one ended up going for $380 more than the 12A. So even though the 12A was unpunched and an earlier card back, this one was a slightly higher grade, 80s and 85s for the sub scores, and that was enough to drive the price up to $23.80. So which one would you want in your collection? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be perfectly fine with either one. Let's be real here. But to me, the 12A unpunched, it feels like a good deal. I mean, you're getting it for almost, let's call that 38%. You're getting it for 38% less than the punched example, and it's an earlier card back. So I think I'd lean towards the 12A in my opinion. All right, now let's dig into the 21 back Gs. So all of these are transition cards. Empire Strikes Back, Secret Star Wars action figure offer. And when I say transition, that just means that only the first 21 figures appeared on these ESB card backs. None of the Empire Strikes Back figures appeared on the 21 back. So it's a transition because they're transitioning from Star Wars cards to Empire Strikes Back for the new line of toys, but there's only the first 21 figures. The same applies to the 48 back Return of the Jedi free 9-num offers. Those only have Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars figures, no Return of the Jedi characters. So that's what I mean by, you know, a transition card. And they tend to be much fewer in number than other card back variations for both the 48 back Return of the Jedi and these 21 back Gs. So as a result, collectors do tend to pay a little bit more for them. Now, none of these were perfect. This one had, you know, some litho issues in the top right, as you can see there from where they tried to remove the price tag. Stop doing that. leave the price tag alone. So that one sold for $374. I've seen high grade AFA graded examples go for 3 times that number. So I think that price was very fair. Here was a C3PO. Likewise, they removed the price ticker, so that left some litho damage in the upper right-hand corner. A little bit of creasing above the hang tab there. So those would factor into the condition, the overall condition for it. That one sold for $412.50. Again, very fair in my opinion. Next up was a Han Solo. And luckily they left the price tag intact on this one. And this one was an unpunched example. The blister did unfortunately have some major bumps to it, as you can see there. Now looking at this blister, this one feels like a 75 blister to me with that big ding in the upper left. It might even get a 70 score for the blister, but that one sold for $501, which is probably more than I'd pay, but I get it. You know, it's a first 12 figure on an, ESB card back, transition card, clear blister, unpunched. So it had a lot going for it, but just I think with that blister ding, that would have held me back. Here was the same card back for Darth Vader. And this one also, it appears to have some water issues, some staining around that racetrack there. You can see a couple of dings and things like that. But right there on the racetrack, below the Kenner logo, there was what appeared to be some staining and some more staining on the left-hand side of the blister. So it wasn't perfect. $600, again, probably more than I would pay. But, I understand why. Because ESB Vaders, any ESB card back for Vader, do tend to command pretty big numbers. Next up was a 32B Leia Bespin. And this one only had 3 photos. It did have a lot of card curl going on. It was a punched example, but still clear blister. Blister looked pretty nice on it. Probably a 75 would be my guess. Maybe a low 80 on that one if you can straighten out the card a little bit. Kmart price sticker top right-hand corner. That one sold for $280.81, which to me, that's a pretty good one to take a flyer on, right? Relative to what an AFA graded example can often sell for. Even in high grade, what, $600 or so, if not more? That's a pretty good one to take a flyer on and maybe grade it yourself or just leave it the way it is in a sliding acrylic case. Here was a 41 back E offerless Greedo. It did have a Lazarus price sticker in the lower right-hand corner, clear blister. Very nice example overall. A little bit of a crease above the hang tab, but, probably a 75 plus or an 80 would be my guess on that one. That one sold for $480 and change. Pretty nice example for that price. Here was a yellowed blister, 48 back A. That sold for $406. This one was the Hoth Stormtrooper. And can't tell on this one whether this one has ink touch-up in the upper right. You can obviously see the litho tear, but below that, there does seem to be a spot where there potentially could be some ink touch-up going on. Not sure on that one, but the yellow blister, I think, held the price back on that. Clear blister, without those kind of issues in the upper right, you can probably pretty safely double this price or at least close to it. But that was a nice example for the price. Here was an AFA 85 Return of the Jedi Shelf Talker. So you can see there, AFA 85 Near Mint Plus. And these were just put at point of retail at retail stores for the new line of toys. It just slid onto shelves. And a lot of people do collect these. That one sold for $10.25. Big number. But it was an AFA 85. Probably one of the highest, if not the highest, on the population report. Here was an AFA 75. 65 back C for Yoda. So this is the Emperor offer punched example, but also a clear blister, which always very desirable to get a clear blister Return of the Jedi Yoda. It doesn't really matter what card back it is, although in general 65 backs do tend to stay a little clearer before they moved over to the 77 backs and later where they tended to yellow a lot easier. But this one was a very nice example. 75 grade, $860 on that one. I think if that was an 80, probably over $1,000, if not pretty close to it. I would think it would be easily $1,000 for, given that an 860 for a 75 grade. Next up, here was another 65C. This was Han Solo. This one was a beauty, in my opinion. It had a little soft crease, it looked like, on the right-hand side, but it was very faint. But the rest of the card looked very nice. Blister looked pretty good there as well. I didn't see any real issues with it. But clear blister, Return of the Jedi Hans do tend to be very desired, whether it's the original card image or the alternate image. And this one sold for $540. That's a price I'd pay all day long for this one. I'd roll the dice on that and get that one graded. I bet it gets an 80 grade. And I think you got some pretty good equity there at $540. Next up was a yellowed blister 65C Obi-Wan. And this is kind of how most of the blisters look on Return of the Jedi card backs, as you guys know. It did have a little ding below the blister. There's that Emperor offer. Punched example with a big crease above the hang tab, so that kept the price back between that and the yellowed blister at $255. On to Power of the Force. This one was a beautiful Chewbacca, unpunched, no price sticker, and it sold for $355. And I was a little curious as to why until I saw the back of the card there, where you can see the obvious creasing on the back. The front of the card looks really nice, at least in the photos, but the seller was kind enough to at least show those creases on the back. At $355, though, that's still a really good price for what it was, I thought. Great deal there. AFA 75 for the Jawa on the Power of the Force card, unpunched, but obviously heavy yellowing to the blister. That one sold for $405. Higher grades usually set you back $600 to $650, 80s and 80 pluses, things like that. So I thought $405 was very fair for what it was. And here was a beautiful EV99. I'm shocked it went for this cheap. It only had pretty light yellowing to the blister, unpunched, no price sticker. I think this one has a good outside chance at an 85 or certainly an 80 plus. For $565, that seems like a really good deal to me. Really good deal. So great pickup, whoever got that one. Here was another one of those KB Toys Overstock 2-packs that we've talked about lately. Obviously in very rough condition. I think it said it was fully sealed though. It doesn't say on the item description, but looking at it, I think it's still fully sealed. I would love to get that graded. I think that would come back with an AFA 10. But pretty cool combination with the Gamorrean Guard and Luke X-Wing. Luke X-Wing seems like it's not one that you usually see on these KB Toys Overstock 2-packs, and that's probably why it sold for what it did at $510. Next up, I've got some vehicles to finish things out. We had a Mint in Seal Box Collector Series Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. That one sold for $443, which I think that was a pretty good deal. There was a little bit of a tear, it looked like, in the upper left-hand corner on the side there, but as you can see, it's still fully sealed, barely. That tape is starting to dry out, so who knows if that tape holds up in shipping, but pretty nice example for $443. Next up was an AFA 70 battle-damaged X-Wing fighter on the Return of the Jedi packaging, so it wasn't a high grade, it was an AFA 70. You can see the damage there in the upper left-hand corner, but it was still fully sealed, and it sold for $680. And, I've seen higher grade examples go for close to $1,000, if not above that, depending on the grade. So I don't think that was a terrible price at all. And then finally, here was that qualified AFA 75 plus AT-AT on the Return of the Jedi packaging. This is not sealed anymore, so it is qualified grade. That just means that it's complete unused contents with 100% complete. And that one sold for $1325. Which at first blush seems like a big number, but I think Mint in Sealed Box in this same grade, an AFA 75 without the qualifying designation, probably pretty easily over $2,000. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at recent sales for Mint on card items as well as a few vehicles. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.